I'm Steve. Steve, probably you're familiar. We're going to learn the Refuah Shalema. My next door neighbor had a bad fall, and she's now in a coma.
I thought she had a car accident.
No. She fell in her house. And she fell in her house. They're so careful. They're so health conscious, careful. COVID.
Very.
So her father, she got COVID. She, asked everybody to leave her house. It was just her and her husband and
her father.
No, her father. I think they moved him to somewhere else because she didn't want him to catch it. I see her father every day. And then she slipped in the house and fell and knocked her head and whatever, unfortunately.
I just heard of somebody else that had the same problem. The wife of an older rabbi, Rabbi Ler, she had some sort of an accident and she was at NYU. She broke her femur.
Did she wake up?
Yes, I think so. They operated her at NYU a couple of days ago. And I see sometimes Rabbi Ler when I daven in the morning and virtually at the Young Bishop Lawrence Cedarhurst.
Yeah.
And he told me that, that his wife had an accident. So he said that she was at NYU and she's coming back in a few days. Right. I asked if you needed anything, let me know.
Yep. This guy is, my neighbor is one of the most prominent people in the neighborhood. Very sweet.
Probably a lot more than the neighborhood.
Yeah, right. Worldwide.
So
we need a refuah. So we're going to learn that we say Tehillim around the clock, but we're going to learn so she should have a refuah shleim and wake up.
Oh,
okay,
man.
so we're on Daf Moed Katan, Daf Yudches, number 18. We're starting from Daf Yudzayin Amud Beis, 4 lines from the bottom, 17b. Tana Rabbanim. This is going to be a very sweet daf. So Tana Rabbanim, the rabbis taught. Kishem she'asur legaleach b'moed. We discussed that you're not allowed to take your haircut on Moed on Yontif. We don't want you to take a haircut on Chol Hamoed because we want you to make sure that you take the haircut before Yontif, so you don't come into Yontif looking all disheveled. So Kach Osir. Hi, Lewis. We just started 4 lines from the bottom on Yud Zayin Amud Beis. Oh, here he is. Okay, I just want to say, hi, Lewis. We're starting 4 lines from the bottom of Yud Zayin Amud Beis. So Shem Sha'amru, just like Chazal said, also legalach b'moed. You're not allowed to take a haircut on Chol Hamoed. Kach also lito tzipornayim b'moed. You're not allowed to you're not allowed to cut your nails on Chol Hamoed. Divrei Rabbi Yehuda. So said Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yossi matter. Rabbi Yossi permits you to cut your nails. Obviously, you can't take a haircut on Chol Hamoed, but you are permitted to cut your nails. Ukeshem Sha'amru, just like they said, Ovo, a mourner for 30 days, also legalech b'mei avlo. You're not allowed to take a haircut for 30 days if you're a mourner. Kach, Kach Aser Little. Hold on. Kach Aser Little Tzipornayim. You're not allowed to cut your nails b'mei avlo in your avela. So according to Rabbi Yehuda, for 30 days you're not allowed to cut your nails when you're an oval. Rabbi Yossi matter. Rabbi Yossi says it's permitted. Amar Ula said, Halacha ke Rabbi Yehuda ba'aval. We paskin like Rabbi Yehuda by an oval. An oval for 30 days should not cut his nails. But halacha ke Rabbi Yossi b'moed. The halacha is like Rabbi Yossi on Chol Hamoed, that you are permitted to cut your nails on Chol Hamoed. So says Ula. Shmuel gave the halachas like this. Halacha ke Rabbi Yossi b'moed of oval. We go to the Ches. The halacha is like Rabbi Yossi on Chol Hamoed and when you're an oval. You're always not allowed to take a haircut. Why? Well, you're not allowed to take a haircut. You're not allowed to cut your nails because it's the Shmuel halacha kedivri hamekel ba'aval. The halacha is like the one that says the one that says that we always go lenient when you're an aval. So when you're an aval, we go lenient. So therefore, but when you're an aval, we paskin like the lenient opinion that you're permitted to cut your nails on when you're an aval. Okay. Now the Gemara says a story, a very fascinating story. It's very interesting. Pinchas achu demar Shmuel. Pinchas, the brother of Shmuel, Isra Bey Milsa. Something bad happened to him. Apparently, this Pinchas lost his son, and his brother is Shmuel. All Shmuel Mishal Tama Minei. Shmuel came to visit him while he's sitting Shiva. Or I don't think he's while he's sitting Shiva during the Avelis, during the first 30 days. Chazan nohu letufrei dehava nefishan. He saw Shmuel observed that Pinchas's nails are long, that he was not cutting his nails. Amalei, so he told Pinchas, Amai loy shakrat luhu. Why aren't you cutting your nails? So this Pinchas answered a very strange answer. Amalei, he told his brother Shmuel, Ibididahava, if you were sitting at Avelis, mi mizalta beikulahai, would you be so, nonchalant about the whole thing? I mean, if you were an avel, would you cut your nails? But the fact he said, if you were an avel, Have, the Gemara says, Kishgoga shiyosi melifnei hashalid. It's like a mistake that comes out of the ruler. When the ruler gives an edict that you should kill this person, you kill him, even though the ruler made a mistake. So when a tzaddik, when somebody who's a holy person says something from his mouth, even though he didn't mean it that way, something bad happened. So Pinchas implied, Shmuel, when you were an avel, would you do the same? Guess what? Shmuel became an avel too. Something happened to Shmuel's family, and that he started sitting shiva. All Pinchas achud mishal tamimene. So his brother Pinchas came to visit him. So Shmuel was angry because Shmuel felt that because Pinchas wasn't careful what comes out of his mouth, shaklinu letufrei chavtinu lape. He took his nails. Shmuel cut his nails on while he was in avel and actually threw it into the face of Pinchas. Amalei, he told Pinchas, less loch, don't you hold of what we normally hold, bris crusa lasifosayim, that there's a deal that God is cuts with the lips, that whatever comes out of your mouth has a certain power to it, whether you mean it or not. So l'toiva or l'ra. And therefore, because you said, if I would sit shiva, would I cut my nails? Now I'm sitting shiva. And actually, Shmuel threw his nails, he didn't cut nails at him. Obviously, he collected it because you're not allowed to leave nails, your fingernails, cut fingernails on the floor, which we're going to discuss in a moment. Rabbi Yochanan said, how do you see in the Chumash that you say something from your mouth, it has an effect? Shenema, Avram el Na'arav. Avram, before going to the Akedah, told his people, the young people that were accompanying him, stay here with the donkey, Va'ani and I, Vahanar and my young son Yitzchak, we're going to go to the mountain, we're going to bow and return to you. Now, really, Avram's intention was that he was going to slaughter Yitzchak. But the fact that he said, we will return, it was like a Freudian slip that came out of his mouth. And we had Siyata Deshmaya that both of them returned, that he did not have to shech Yitzchak. So fascinating Gemara. A person has to be so careful of how he expresses himself, because sometimes you express yourself in such a harsh way, it could take effect. So that's what the Gemara says. So now the Gemara says, back into the discussion of cutting nails, so you're permitted to cut your nails when you're an avel, right? But Sava Minei Diyad in. When Shmuel permitted in Paskin like Rabbi Yossi, only you're allowed to cut your fingernails because you don't want to look disgusting. People are visiting you. In the reguloid, but you're not permitted to discuss to cut your toenails. That's what the yeshiva students understood that Shmuel meant. Only permitted to cut fingernails, but not toenails. I have a tradition, and it was explained directly from Shmuel. There's no difference. You can cut your fingernails and your toenails, no difference. Shmuel gave the permission, but there's a caveat. You're not allowed to cut it in the normal way using a specialized nail cutter. You're allowed to use scissors, or maybe according to Rashi you can't, but you're allowed to use you can't use a specialized instrument that's used for cutting nails. So you have to do some.
They tell you now to bite your nails.
Oh, you're allowed to bite your nails.
That's what the rabbis say now.
Oh, okay. You're allowed to bite your nails.
If you can, you should, but yeah.
Right. That's because you have to do it with a shino, even though it's permitted. So the Gemara says like this: Amar Rab Shemin bar Abba. Rab Shemin bar Abba says a nice, interesting story. Hava kamine kamed Rab Yochanan be midrasha b'chelash Moed. Now we're reverting to Chol Moed. He says Rab Shemin said that I was in front of Rab Yochanan in the study hall on Chol Moed, and he was giving shir. Now v'shaklinin, like you said, Steve, v'shaklinin trufei b'shinei. He cut his nails with his teeth. Vizarkine and threw it on the floor. Okay, what a rabbi. He cut his nails with his teeth and threw it on the floor on Chol Moed. So from that little incident, Shmamina Tlas, we saw three halachas. Shmamina, we hear from there, Mutal Litol Tzipornayim B'chula Shel Moed. You're allowed to cut your nails on Chol Moed. Okay, because it was Chol Moed, and he was cutting his nails with his teeth, albeit. Shmamina, we also derive from here, Ein Behem Mishim Mius. It's not considered repulsive. You're not allowed to do something repulsive in your next to your neighbor in shul, like spit or leave a crumpled tissue that you blew your nose. That's repulsive. But cutting your nails, biting your nails, and spitting it out, that's not repulsive, and therefore Rabbi Yochanan was allowed to do it. I mean, he did it in the Beis Medrash. Ushmami, from here we see that after you cut your nails, mutul l'zarkam, you're permitted to throw it on the floor. So the Gemara says, Eini, how could that be? It's not so. But Tanya, we learned in the Brisa, shloisha devarim ne'emar b'tzipornayim. Three things are said about three types of practices that people do with their nails. HaKoivrim, if after you cut your nails, you bury it, you flush it down the toilet, tzaddik, you're a righteous person. So the Gemara is going to explain why. Sarfin, if you burn it, you go out of your way to burn your nails, chassid. You're, chassid, somebody even greater than a tzaddik, going beyond the letter of the law. Zarkin, if you throw it down on the floor, Rasha, you're an evil person. So the Gemara says, Tamamai, what's the reason why I can't throw cut nails, on the floor, fingernails on the floor? So the Gemara says, Shema tavar alei isha ubara. Maybe a pregnant woman will step on it, v'tapil, and she'll have a miscarriage. And therefore, like this. So this is the question. First of all, that idea that a woman stepping on fingernails is something that we can't understand. What does that have to do in being miscarrying a baby? So this has to do with kishuf or something demonic. I don't know what it is, but for some reason, it's important not to take your fingernails and after you cut them and throw them on the floor. So for this pregnant woman may come and step on it and she'll have a miscarry. So the question is, how could Rabbi Yochanan cut his fingernails with his teeth in the Beis Medrash and throw it on the floor? So the Gemara says, Isha be midrash lo shchicha, since a woman is not found in the Beis Medrash normally, and therefore, therefore these halachas of how to get rid of nails after you cut them didn't apply in that situation with Rabbi Yochanan. Now the Gemara says, but true that he threw his nails on the floor, but you're going to say zimdim mikanshe lehu ushudei le'abroi. Maybe the custodian is going to sweep them up and throw his fingernails onto the floor outside. And then you're back to the concern. Maybe outside on the streets, a woman's going to walk and step on his fingernails, a woman who's pregnant, and then going to have a miscarry. So the Gemara says something about this, thing. Came in the ishtani, when you remove the nails from the place that you cut it and put it in another location, ishtani, it's changed, and therefore it doesn't have that potency to cause a miscarriage. So therefore, even if they would take the fingernails of Rabbi Yochanan and throw it out of their Beis Medrash, it would not harm a woman. Amar Rabbi Yehuda, Amar Rav. Rabbi Yehuda said in the name of Rav, Zug ba mechamasa. He said that there were a pair of groups of Talmidei Chachamim. A pair of Talmidei Chachamim came from this place called Chamason. It must be a place somewhere. Lifnei Rebbe, they came to visit Rabbeinu HaKadosh, the editor of the Mishnayos, Rabbi Yehuda Nasi. Umazitra Masni, Mazitra had actually a brisa that said it. It's not Rabbi Yehuda Marav saying the story, but there was a brisa that repeated the story. Zug ba mechamasim, a pair of students came from Chamasim, Lifnei Rebbe. And they asked Rabbeinu HaKadosh, Bikshu mimenu tzipornayim. They asked him a question regarding cutting fingernails, probably on Chol Moed. Or Avelis, during Avelis, and he gave them permission to do so, like Shmuel said. Now the Gemara says, "V'im bikshu mehem mimenu safa." If they would have been asked him a question, what to do about cutting a mustache? Can you cut a mustache when you're an oval? Because the hairs are getting into your mouth. If you have a mustache, the hairs get into your mouth, and it's very disturbing to eat. It makes the food repulsive. So if they would have asked them that question, Hitelahem, Rabbeinu HaKadosh would have permitted them to cut their mustache, even though they're an oval. Ushmul Amar, Shmuel says the story is the truth was Af Bikshmam Safa Vehitalahem. They actually asked him that question, can we cut the mustache? And he gave them permission to do so. The Gemara says, Amar Avital Safra. It's not a common name, but this Avital the barber. He's a barber, but that's his living. But he's also an Amira. Fascinating. So, he's a Amira who said Mishmei de Rav. He was a student of Rav. He said over the following statement: Safa mizavis luzavis. A long mustache, no matter where it is, that's covering the entire mouth, you're allowed to cut the mustache while you're in oval if it's disturbing you. Amar Rabami said, Uvisafa hamakeves. You have to make sure that the hairs are long enough that it's getting into your mouth and it's bothering you from eating. But Rabbi Nachman Yitzchak said that even though I have a small mustache, no matter what, I'm always allowed to. My mustache is always considered bothering me if it's a little bit long, and therefore, even though it probably doesn't reach into my mouth, I'm permitted to cut my mustache even when I'm an oval. Gemara says, now that we quoted this Avital Safra, the Avital the barber, so the Gemara quotes another statement of two statements from him. And that's probably it you'll see from him in Shas. V'ama Avital Safra Mishmei de Rav. Avital the Safra said in the name of Rav, Paroi Shehoya b'mei Moshe. The pharaoh that existed in the times of Moshe. Remember, there's in the history of Egypt, probably was about 300 pharaohs, and there are 130 pyramids. So, which was the power that was in the time of Moshe? You want to recognize him. So he said, Who Ama Uzkane Ama? Who Ama? He was a midget, so he was 2 feet tall. Uzkane, his beard, Ama was 2 feet long. So he was a short man with a long beard. I guess if you look at the hieroglyphics of the pictures of those pharaohs, you always see them with that straight out beard. That was a sign of power. But the Gemara says over here, Uparmashtakai Ama Vazeres, and his male organ was 2 feet and a few inches long. So it says he looked like he was a very strange looking human being. But what the Gemara wants to imply is that he had a power and an arrogance, a very strong arrogance, but his tavot, his desires, his lust was even greater than his arrogance. L'kayamash nema, this keeps in line, aligns itself with a pasuk that describes the paroi that ruled at the time of the Exodus. Ushval anashim yakamale. He was the lowest of humans he took over power, which shows you something else, that it's not always the most good-looking, best-looking person that ultimately gets power. Sometimes you have somebody so ugly, like the power that lived in the time of Moshe, and he was the powerful person, because Hashem decides who is the most powerful king, who gets the job to be king. So therefore, that's how we describe the power that existed in the time of Moshe, the Pharaoh. He said, Avital Safra said in the name of Rav, Paroi Shoy b'mei Moshe, the power that lived in the time of Moshe, Amgushi Haya. He was a great sorcerer, and that's Shnema Hina Yoytze Hamaima. What I think this means is that there was a period of time where there was great chaos in Egypt, and what determined who would get the power to become Pharaoh was the one who was the greatest sorcerer, the greatest magician, or something like that. And therefore, Paroi in the time of Moshe, Amgushi Haya, he was a great magician or a great sorcerer. Shnema Hine Yoytze Hamaima, he would go out to the water, and people viewed him as a deity, basically, because he claimed to be have the power of magic. The Mishnah said, the following people are permitted to do their laundry on Chol Hamoed if you come from Medina Sayam. Amar Rav Asi, Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Asi said in Nechem, Rabbi Yochanan, we had this before, a guy who has one shirt. He wore the shirt the first day of Yom Tiv, and now it's Chol Hamoed. So he's permitted to do a wash on Chol Hamoed, because you can't fault him. How could he have, even if he did his laundry before Yom Tiv, it's definitely going to get dirty during the first days of Yom Tiv, so therefore we gave him permission to do laundry on Chol Hamoed if he only has one shirt. Masav Rabbi Yirmiyah asked the question, but our Mishnah says, the following people are permitted to do laundry. If you get released from prison, somebody comes from an overseas trip, etc. But it doesn't mention the case of somebody who has only one shirt. And only these cases are permitted to do laundry. But somebody who only has one shirt, perhaps he's not permitted to do wash and do laundry and chalamoid. That's what it would imply from our Mishnah. So Amalei Rav Yaakov Rabbi Yirmiyah. So Rav Yaakov answered Rabbi Yirmiyah, as boraloch masnisin afagav di'isle trei umtanfe. Our Mishnah, which gives the leniencies to only 5 people to do laundry, are talking about people who have more than one shirt. He has 2 shirts, and therefore he could have done so most people could, if you have 2 shirts, you're not permitted to do laundry and chalamoid because you should have wore one shirt the first days of chalamoid, the first days of Yom Tov, and the second shirt for the last days of Yom Tov and chalamoid. So you can't do laundry, except if you had a reason why you couldn't do your laundry before Yom Tov because you come from an overseas trip or you were just released from prison, then even if you have 2 shirts, we permit you to do laundry. But if somebody who only has one shirt is always permitted to do laundry because he has no way around it. He only has one shirt. He wore the shirt. It was laundered. He wore it the first days of Yom Tov. Certainly, we give him permission to do the laundry of a chalamoid, so he'll have the shirt again for the rest of Yom Tov. Shalach Rav Yitzchak bar Yaakov bar Guri Mishmed Rav Yochanan. Rav Yitzchak said a statement in the name of Rav Yochanan. Kli pishta mutar lechapsa b'chol hashamayim. A linen garment you're allowed to wash a chalamoid because they get, as soon as you wear it, they get sweaty. So even if you washed it before Yom Tov, they get dirty always after one wearing it, and therefore you're allowed to do the laundry in chalamoid. So the Gemara says, Masiv Rava. So Rava asked the question. We learned in the Brisa, in our Mishnah, mitbechais hayadayim. If you have hand towels, or mitbechais, we go on the base, hasaparim, or let's say towels that the barber uses. So those things you're allowed to do wash. Hari ed. Only these things, these types of material, of these types of clothing. Not clothing, but useful items that get dirty, you're allowed to do laundry. Kli pisht and loy, but a linen clothing, an item made out of linen, you're not allowed to do laundry. So how do you answer that? Our Mishnah is talking about if, let's say, the hand towel is made from wool. Okay, so then you're allowed to do laundry. If your suit is made of wool, you can't do laundry because that you could keep clean throughout Yom Tov. But if a hand towel, which is expected to get always wiped and dirty, those are permitted to do laundry on chalamoid. However, a kli pishta, no matter what it is, even if it's not a hand towel, a kli pishta, if you have a clothing, a shirt that's made out of linen, so that's going to get dirty very fast. So if it's a type of thing that gets dirty very fast, then you're permitted to do laundry at chalamoid. The way to understand it is like, let's say, cloth diapers, right? So it's certainly expecting to get dirty. So then you're permitted to do cloth diapers on chalamoid. Same idea. Omar bar Hedya said, I could say witness, Chazali Yamashel Tiberia. I observed the Yam of Tiberia, the Kinneret, and the Mapikle Mishchile Demani Kitana B'choler Demayid. It was full of people carrying linen clothing after they did the wash of chalamoid. Apparently, this linen clothing were very common in Tiberia, and people were actually doing laundry on chalamoid in the Kinneret. So we see that a kli pishtan, it's permitted to do laundry with a kli pishtan. Maskef la Abaya says, man le malon the ritzayin chachamim avdi. How do you know that all those people doing the laundry, just because you see it, doesn't mean that the chachamim agreed to it? Dilma, maybe shaloi birtzayin chachamim avdi. Maybe they were doing their laundry and it was not with the chachamim, were not in agreement what they were doing, but people were doing it anyway. So it's no proof for what you see people doing things. We are to the Mishnah. The Mishnah. Mishnah says the elu koisvim b'moed. We know that on chalamoid you're not allowed to actually write, and you have to think about it. People don't write checks on chalamoid or writing, things down. You have to be careful. They're all halachos of what you can use a pen for on Chol Hamoed. But the Mishnah says, the elu koisvim b'moed. The following you're allowed to use and write down on Chol Hamoed. Because why? It's really, it's a malacha. You're not allowed to do work on Chol Hamoed. So why are you allowed to write the following things? Because these things, if you don't write it now on Chol Hamoed, it could cause you a loss. All the following things could cause a loss. We'll see that now in the Mishnah. Kiddushin Nashim, getting married to a woman. One of the ways that a person could betroth a woman is by writing a shtar and giving it to her, a piece of paper, even if it's not worth a penny, just giving to her. And on the penny, and you say to her, Hareyat Mekudeshes li b'zeh, then that you're permitted to write that down on Chol Hamoed and betroth a woman, get engaged to a woman on Chol Hamoed. The Gittin, divorce is. Someone wants to divorce his wife, he's allowed to write the get on Chol Hamoed, because maybe if you're not going to write it now, the Eidim or the husband is going to Medina Sayyam, is going on an overseas trip, and will not get another chance to write the get. Vishoivrim, receipts. If a loiva pays the malva could say, write him a receipt, because it's possible that the loiva is going to say, I'm going away, and if you don't write me a receipt, I'm not going to pay you now. So pardon me. So the loiva is going to say, I'm not going to pay you now. So therefore, you're allowed to write a receipt. Daitike is referring to a will. Okay, a guy who's on his deathbed and says, I want such and such, give this to so and so. So that's called a daitiki. So you're allowed to write it down, his words on Chol Hamoed. Matana, if someone also wants to give a gift to somebody, so you're allowed to write it down. Write it down what he meant. Upruzbulin, and a pruzbul you're allowed to write on Chol Hamoed. Pruzbul means that if somebody lends somebody money and he's afraid that Shemitah is going to invalidate, cancel out the loan, because Shemitah cancels out loan, you're allowed to write a pruzbul on Chol Hamoed that you're giving the right to collect on the debt that you lend to Bezdin, and Bezdin has the right to collect, so the loan will not be canceled out. So this we'll learn more about that later, but not now. Igros Shum is letters of Shum that the Bezdin estimates regarding Yerusha. They do an appraisal, and you can write down what the appraisal of Bezdin is if they're dividing up assets. The Igros Mazon. Igros Mazon means if a husband marries a woman who has a child, and he promised when he got married that he's going to support this new child, this stepson or stepdaughter, you're allowed to write down that star on Chol Hamoed. Shtitre chalitza, a chalitza star, umeunim, or a miun star, which means that in those days that if a little girl who did not have a father, Chachamim gave the right to the brothers to marry this girl off. And the reason is they wanted her to get married is that Chas v'Shalom, since her father is not looking out for her because there is no father here, so they gave the right for the brother to marry her off so that she won't become a prutza. So if she doesn't like her husband as she goes older, let's say she's 10, 11 years old, and she doesn't like her husband, then she just says, I don't like him, and she walks away from the marriage. So that shtar, it's not like a get, but that mi'un, she refuses to stay with the guy, that document you could write on Chol Hamoed. V'shitrei birurim, and stars that select who's going to be your judge, Gzeres Bezdin, decrees of Bezdin, the Igroi Shel Rashus, and letters, letters of saying hello to somebody. Let's say you need to write a letter, because if you're not going to, what's the davar of it there? If you don't get the letter off today, the mailman's not going to come back to deliver the letter till another month from now. So they gave you permission to write these things, to write it on Chol Hamoed. Again, the Mishnah just gave off a whole bunch of things that you're permitted to write on Chol Hamoed. But other things, if you don't have to write on Chol Hamoed, you should not be writing on Chol Hamoed. And that's why some people will not write even Chedushay Torah on Chol Hamoed. Again, because it's not considered to be something davara of it. The Gemara begins a very fascinating discussion. Amar Shmuel. Shmuel said, "Mutar la'aris isha b'chol hamoed." A person is allowed to get engaged with a girl a chol hamoed. Shema yekadmenu achar. What's the loss over here? If you decide that you want to marry this lady, this girl, you're allowed to write up a star that you're getting married. You're engaged to this girl, because we are afraid if you don't do it, somebody else is going to come in the interim. And because you delay till after Yontif, by after Yontif, she wants to get engaged to somebody else, and you're going to lose out your opportunity to get engaged with this girl. So that's why you're permitted to give you're engaged with somebody in Chol Hamoed. Maybe somebody will beat you to the punch. So let's bring a proof to this concept. The Mishnah said, "The elu kaisim b'moed." The following you're allowed to write on Moed, kiddushay nashim, getting engaged to a lady. So that our Mishnah is exactly what it's talking about. Getting engaged to a lady, you're allowed to write the contract on Chol Hamoed. So you're allowed to get engaged on Chol Hamoed. So my lav shitri kedusha mamish. Aren't we talking about engagement, shtaris, engagement document? So the Gemara says, "Loy." Our Mishnah is now talking about getting engagement document. Really, you can only get engaged after Yontif. So what is our Mishnah talking about? Shtar psikasa. The shtar that people commit that they're going to give for their children as a dowry. Rav Gidol Amarav. Rav Gidol Amarav says, "Kama ata noisin lebencha." So they ask you, how much money, what kind of amount of money are you giving to your son if you're going to enter this camp, if you're going to enter if your son is going to get engaged to this girl. So the father says, "Kach v'kach, I'm giving him such and such." Let's say he's giving $10,000, and they ask the father of the girl, "Kamata noisin lebitcha, how much are you going to give your daughter when she gets engaged to this guy?" Kach v'kach, he commits such and such. So the parents of the kids committed that they're going to give something for their daughter or son when they get engaged. So even though there's no kinyan, there's no kinyan, the fact that they said it with their mouths, they have to keep that commitment. If the kids got engaged, kanu, that automatically there's a kinyan and a lien on that property because they made that commitment with their mouths. It's one of the rare things the Mishnah says, the Brisa says, Rav Gidol says, just by your mouth alone, you could effectuate a kinyan, which means an ownership. That means that money is committed, and you could actually put a lien on it. Anyway, so that's what our Mishnah is talking about. But the engagement itself, the actual engagement, that's not maybe what would not be permitted on Chol Hamoed. So you don't have a proof that you're permitted to get engaged on Chol Hamoed. So the Gemara says, let's bring another proof. You're not allowed to have a wedding on Chol Hamoed. You're not allowed to have a wedding because that's a simcha. And you're not allowed to have another simcha on Chol Hamoed besides the simchas yontif. But the Mishnah says weddings are not permitted. But to have an engagement party, shari, that would be permitted. So we see you're allowed to get engaged on Chol Hamoed. So the Gemara says, Loi mibaya kama. Loi mibaya, you don't have to tell me that. Loi mibaya la'aris. Certainly to get engaged, I know that it could be you're not allowed to get engaged on Chol Hamoed. The loika of mitzvah, there is no real mitzvah to get engaged. The mitzvah is to get married, but to get engaged, there's no mitzvah. So certainly you can't do that at Chol Hamoed. Of mitzvah, but I would have thought to get married, to have a wedding at Chol Hamoed, where you're actually doing the mitzvah, I would think that would be permitted. So that's what the Brisa teaches you, that it's asur. So where we're at right now is that we don't have a proof. We don't know, can one get engaged, make an engagement party on Chol Hamoed? So Tashma, come in here. The Talmud Bavli Shmuel, there's a Brisa. And from Shmuel, it says, Ma'arsin, you're allowed to get engaged on Chol Hamoed, Avaloi Kainsin, but you're not allowed to get married. Vein Oisin Su'udis Erison, you can't make a party, an engagement party, but you're allowed to commit and have an engagement on Chol Hamoed, which means that you give the kedushin and you have the marriage later on. Why? You can't have a party because that's a simcha that's going to disturb the simcha of Yom Tiv, but you're allowed to get engaged. Shema Mina is a proof positive that you're allowed to commit and get engaged on Chol Hamoed. Now, What's the reason? Again, what's the reason why you're allowed to get engaged? Why should you get engaged on Chol Hamoed? Push it off to after Yom Tov and get engaged. So Shmuel gave the reason, Shema Yikadmena Acha. If you're not going to do and make and close the deal now, could be after Yom Tov, another person is going to marry this girl. So the Gemara says, Umi Shmuel, Amar Shmuel, Shema Yikadmena Acha. Did Shmuel say that we are concerned that maybe somebody else is going to beat you to it and marry this girl? It's impossible. If a girl is destined for you, it's destined. Nobody can take it away from you. Because Shmuel said, every single day, Bas kol yotzes v'omeres. There's a voice from heaven that says, Bas Ploini lePloini. The daughter Ploini, the daughter of so-and-so is going to get married to so-and-so. Stay Ploini lePloini. This property of Ploini is going to be sold to this person. In other words, it's predetermined way before before a person's born, actually, who he's going to marry. So how could you say, why are we so concerned that we're afraid that if you're not going to get engaged to this girl, somebody else is going to take you away from it? Ella, so Gemara says, Shema yikatmenu acha barachmim. It's possible that somebody with prayer is going to take away your zivug. How is that possible? With prayer, somebody can take away your zivug. So the Gemara is going to say that if somebody is lovesick, let's say with your basharta, that person who's lovesick with your basharta has a power to pray that your zivug should die and not get married to her. So therefore, a person, because you'll hear the story and you'll understand what I'm saying. He overheard a person. Rava heard this person, the boy Rachme, and Omar. He's praying loud. Tizdam li planisa. I want to marry so and so. This girl is mine. He's lovesick over her. So Rava said, Loiti boy Rachme hachim. You can't pray like that. If this is your bashart, she's not going away from you. It's destined for you. And if not. If she's not your basharta, no matter how much you're going to pray, she's not going to come to you. And then when she's not going to come to you, kafarta b'Hashem, you're going to deny God and say, "Oh, God never listens to prayer." So don't pray like that. Afterwards, he heard that the guy adjusted his prayer. Okay, now it's not my basharta, or it is my basharta. I don't know, but this guy started praying a strange prayer. I pray that I die before she gets married to somebody else. I cannot see her being married to somebody else. Or she should die before me, that she should die, and I shouldn't, so that she doesn't get married to somebody else. So Rava told her, didn't I tell you don't pray like that? That's terrible. That's a terrible prayer. So basically what the Gemara is saying is that with prayer, if somebody is lovesick with your bashert, that person potentially could pray that girl should die because he doesn't want her to get engaged to you. Therefore, if you find somebody, even a Chalmai, get engaged to her right now so that he can't pray anymore. The other one, that the person that's lovesick with your bashert wouldn't be able to pray that your bashert should die. So that's why we permitted allowing people to get engaged with each other on Chol Hamoed. Hachi Amar Rav B'Shem Rabbi Reuven ben Utztarbuli. The following was name of Rav, said in the name of Rab Reuven. What did he say? That God predetermines who you're going to marry. Min Torah, you see it in the Torah, Min Neviim and Eksuvim. From Torah and Neviim Eksuvim, you see the same idea. Me Hashem ish li isha. God determines which woman goes to which man. Min Torah diksiv v'yan love v'mesul v'yomim Hashem yotza davar. Min Neviim diksiv v'ovev imel le'yodor ki men Hashem hi. Min Eksuvim diksiv ba'is v'hoim nachas oveis Hashem isha maskeles. So from Hashem determines you're going to get a smart woman. The same idea that Hashem really determines precisely who you're going to marry, and therefore that's what we're saying over here. It's like Baskol Ploini LePloini. It's predetermined. What that means is like this, and I think it means everything God predetermines. God predetermined what house I'm going to buy. God even predetermined what car I'm going to have. No. These things, when it comes to shidduch, what the Gemara is trying to say is you don't have to put in so much hishtadlus, so much effort. It's predetermined. You have to do a little bit of hishtadlus, and then it comes to you. And then those that know how shidduchim work, that's how it is. You sometimes you put too much hishtadlus and then nothing happens, but a little bit of hishtadlus you need to do, and then it comes. So that's what the Gemara says. Everything else needs a normal hishtadlus. All right, let's stop over here because there's another idea over here. But
Baruch, it's interesting that excuse me to interrupt, but we learned even on Shabbos you could write a shtar up if you're buying a piece of land in Israel. And here at Chol Moed, it doesn't mention it in the Mishnah as one of the on the list.
As buying a property,
Yeah,
I got to look at that. Buying a property as one of the things.
Shabbos you could do it, and Chol Moed they don't list it.
Yeah,
interesting. You could lose it. You could lose a piece of property easily.
Right. I gotta look at the Mefarshim regarding that.
Yep.
It's a long list of things. Kiddush and Nashim, so I should list that too.
I'm just wondering. Yeah.
Good question. But I find this Gemara fascinating about Shidduchim and all that.
Yeah.
Fascinating Gemara.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Very good.
Gute Nacht.
Good.